Rob Murray Duncan, best known as probably Seth in Stargate circles, as well as Melbourne Jackson, is here live with us. Without further ado, Seth himself, Rob Murray Duncan. Hello, sir. Welcome to Dial the Gate.
Hello, David. Very nice to be here and to see all of you, although I can't see you. Glad that you're listening in.
How are you doing? You
I'm
well?
doing great. I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm in California.
Okay.
I've lived a few places over the time, but things in California were good. During these past couple of years, I was actually very busy doing new play readings with a company in New York City called Circle Repertory Theater Company.
Okay.
So that kept things sharp and kept me awake. That was helpful.
Okay. Any particular plays you'd like to shout out? Anything in particular that has been particularly rewarding for you to work on?
In the past, I was fortunate to understudy John Malkovich in the production of Burn This. It was actually the world premiere production in Los Angeles.
Wow.
So the greater gift was watching them rehearse for 5 weeks and seeing how that was going on. And it was a little bit frightening. There were only there were 3 understudies for 4 roles. The other male doubled up, and I actually had a nightmare once. I
bet you did.
It was you know those theaters where they train medical students and there's the bed down below. And
yeah, the operating theater, right.
So I was in one of those, sitting there in my underwear. All you shrinks will get a hoot out of that. And there was nobody there but me, like right in the center, halfway up. And all of a sudden I hear this door open behind me, and at the top, John comes in, and he walks down and over and down and over and down and over until he's sitting right beside me. And he goes, you know, I realize you think you're hot shit, but just
settle down.
That was the end of the dream. But it was a great experience, and I finally got to do the show down in San Diego about 4 years later. So it was fantastic.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
That's legit. So we want to make sure that everyone knows that both Rob and I are going to be at GateCon in September over, I believe, Labor Day weekend.
Wonderful.
So September 1st to the 4th. So Vancouver, everyone needs to check it out. It is the Stargate event of the year. We were supposed to have one a couple of years ago, but COVID. But now we are back in action, and so if you want to check out Rob, meet him live and ask him questions. Besides today, obviously, we're going to give you a chance to do that today. GateCon is the place to be. Is this your first GateCon?
My first GateCon. My first GateCon, I did a Chevron in England.
Okay, how was that experience? What's the Stargate convention like?
Oh, it's incredible! It's incredible. It was my first one, so the fans were from all over Europe.
Yes,
and they were extremely cool. And when people talk about Stargate being a family, often we're talking about what happens on set, but I realized the family is global. And everybody was warm and charming and funny and just really down to earth and chill. And you go off into different groups and you talk to different people.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night we went dancing, and it was a big area, and we were all dancing and stuff like that. There were like 5 other actors there as well. So it was very, very cool. And then we were supposed to do a couple more, but of course the last couple of years canceled those. So hopefully in the near future that'll happen again.
Where was Chevron? What city was that in?
It was in London, specifically at Heathrow, out by Heathrow Airport.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was once in the Governor General's Foot Guards in Canada. I'm originally from Canada.
Okay.
So it was great to go and watch the changing of the guard in London, and sort of be inspired by that. It was very British, so I had a day off when I could go and do that. So that was cool.
I'd argue there's nothing more British than that. I would think.
Other than the Queen inviting you to tea.
Right, exactly. Jeez, man, oh man. What made you get into this field? How old were you? What did you see? What did you experience where it was like, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah. So in about 7th grade, a teacher took us out on a field trip to see a film. And it was the first film I'd ever seen. And it was the old black and white of Romeo and Juliet. And I just was in awe of the world they created. And I, kind of fell in love with Olivia Hussey. But so that was the first real impact. And then some kids from some fellows from high school, we went and did these in native stories in the Museum of Natural History for young kids over the weekend. And again, I saw it back at me where they're just like, oh, and
Right.
there's a real connection. And so the final thing that did it for me was I moved to Kingston, Ontario, and my theater arts teacher, Gord Love, who I'm still in touch with, was incredibly inspiring. And theater class was different than anything else because it was a collaboration of people working together and being really chill with each other and trying to make something out of that. And, it's different than sitting through English class or mathematics or anything else. So Gord was incredibly inspiring. So then I ended up living in Ottawa most of my life, and, everybody works in the government. So I applied to work in the government, and I ended up working with the Mounties. And then, I thought, oh, this is a sexy job. Maybe I'll join the Mounties. And so I thought, I don't really have great credentials. So I quit the job and I went into the Foot Guards, and I was top recruit, and they wanted me to join as a marksman and all this stuff. But when I went for my medical exam, my doctor was like, you want to be a cop? And I'm a police officer. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, is that what you want to do? I said, well, and I'd already been doing a lot of theater and musical theater around Ottawa. So I said, well, I guess, it's Ottawa, right? Everybody works in the government. He goes, well, my wife is a psychologist, and she'll do some tests and sort of, she's not going to tell you what you should be, but she's going to give you some ideas. So we did the Rorschach test, the ink blot.
God. Okay.
My favorite one was there was a white 8x8 card with a black ink drawing on it, and and all of these, there were about 8 of them, and she said, "Tell me what's missing," and she'd hold one up, and I got them all except that one, and it was a pony running down a hill out of control with a saddle but no rider. And I left and I called and said, "I know what it is. There's no rider." She goes, "Oh, too late." But I like that rebellious tone to the whole idea. So,
Right.
so a week later, she says, "Okay, come on in. I've got some information for you." So I go in, and she says, "Now, these are just metaphors. These aren't factual jobs you should be doing, but this is just an idea." And she said, "On one hand, you're a dancer, and on the other hand, you're a captain of a ship." So in the end, it kind of came true in some ways, in that I got into directing and producing, which is, to me, creative guidance of a ship. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
But just to hear those things was good. And then my application for the Mounties was already at play, and I saw them come onto the base to talk to my sergeants and stuff. They went to my girlfriend's father, and her brother came up to me later, and he said, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but Dad told the Mounties he thought you really wanted to be an actor." And I was like, what was cool about that, David, is that my father wasn't present, so I never had permission to even think of acting as a job. So even though it came at me secondhand, that was actually kind of a light bulb went off and said, "Oh, I can try and do this." And my mom at that point had said, historically, it was great, because she said, Robert, you've got a job, you're at a certain age, maybe you should try to find your own place now. And that changed my life. I was shocked. I was a little angry, because it's that moment of growing up. You don't want to.
Yeah, you're being pushed out of your comfort zone.
And it was so necessary. I went to Toronto. I started acting. I started asking questions. The director said, "You need training." So I got some summer stock work up at Red Barn Theatre with some famous Canadians, Tom Kneebone and William Needles. And I asked Mr. Needles, I said, "Mr. Needles, where do I get training?" And he said, "Well, if you want to work in Canada and the United States, go train in the US." And understand there was not much going on in Toronto at that point, training wise. And then he said, "If you want to work in Canada and England, go study in England." So I auditioned for RADA and the Neighborhood Playhouse. And the RADA thing is another story. But I went to the Playhouse in New York City, and I was literally interviewed by Sanford Meisner. He had he retired. We got bored, so he came back to teach right in the 2 years I was there. So anyway, that launched everything. Toronto was a significant, every one of those moments when I look back was critical to me, being into the acting world.
Tell me about a role that transformed you or your perception in a way that you didn't expect, or that pushed you in a way that you didn't expect that kind of has carried with you for the rest of your life? Is there one that you can point to that has kind of done that?
Mm. In some way burned this, but
Yes.
there was a new play I did down, and they do tend to be theater because I've done a lot more theater, and the theater roles tend to be more intense emotionally and stuff. It was a play called Fakes, and it's a true story about Hans von Meegeren, who was a famous painter in around the
Yeah.
time of the 1930s, 40s. And he was so angry that the critics wouldn't pay attention to him that he painted a painting in the style of a Vermeer. It wasn't a copy of a Vermeer. It was one that when you looked at it, you thought Vermeer did this.
Right.
So, and it worked. And then he was supposed to say, see, you don't know what you're doing. I'm the artist. But he made so much money that he kept doing it. And it was
In someone else's style.
Yes.
Okay.
But they kept thinking they were unfound Vermeers.
Oh,
no. They even built
a true
wing.
Story.
It's a true story. And they built a wing in one of the Dutch countries for his painting. And then, so the reason he could sell them all, because there's a lot of scrutiny when you're looking at, selling paintings, because they're millions of dollars. So that scrutiny was reduced because it was the time of the Nazis. And so they were buying stuff all over the place and they weren't paying attention. So all of these things got sold. So then it became known that he did this. And strangely enough, he now had to prove, they were done so well, they didn't believe that he made them. And he had to prove that he painted them or face the death penalty for selling a national treasure in the time of the Nazi invasion. So the writer wrote a beautiful speech, and we called it Paint for Your Life. And it was like the judge said, I need you to prove it. So go in your cell. You've got 4 days. And it would take me 6 months to do one of these, or von Meegeren. So, so basically, it's like having a gun to your head.
Yeah.
And that whole identity stuff. There's something about that play, because you see, in a slightly deeper meaning, I could copy Malkovich, but he still originated it. I didn't copy him. I borrowed a couple of things, but if someone copies something, that's still not an original work of art, even though it looks beautiful. The artist is the creator of something new, and that von Meegeren was never that. So his cause was shallow. So it was just a lot to think about in terms of what we value in our lives and all of that. And it was an extremely emotional play, and that's always fun. And reach out and destroy your audience,
God, absolutely. Was it one scene? Was it like a whole series of moments over his career? What I'm interested to hear how this particular play was configured.
It was, and I think the writer really wrote it as a film script because the scenes were so quick sometimes, and they were trying to figure out how it was going to change. But it was over a pretty long period of his time, because he met I don't know if this is true, but in the story, he met a gallery owner. Okay. And she's an older woman, very wealthy, and so they live together, and he has a forum to put his paintings out there. So it was probably over about a 20-year span, because when he got all the money, he started getting into I don't know what the drug of the day was, but he got all screwed up from drugs, and he was just partying, very decadent time.
Wow. Tell us about your first episode in Stargate, The Gamekeeper. Tell us about getting that role.
Yeah, that was cool. I didn't know much about Stargate, and I showed up, and the cool thing was I had met Michael Shanks about 5 years earlier when I did a pass through Vancouver to check it out. I was there for like a month, and way back, I don't know the date, but X-Files was the only thing that was going on. It was very quiet. So I left. But where I was staying, the friend of a friend was saying, hey, let's go see this friend of mine's doing his final production at University of British Columbia. And Michael was doing this Shakespeare piece, and I'm embarrassed, I don't remember the exact play, but I remember him. I mean, he was just like, boom. So then when I got on set, we talked about that, because he remembered me because he knew I'd understudied Malkovich and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So we got to talk about that. But getting on the set that day was very cool. We had like sort of the hippies kind of vibe going, and the actress came in from Toronto, Lisa Bunting, and Yeah, the director, Bill Corcoran, was also very good. And the scene we had repeated over and over and over again, and they just enjoyed what we were doing. So it was a cool family. So speaking of family, when I went to the craft services table, which is where you can get snacks and coffee, I was going for a coffee, and it was in another room. But when you open the door, it was another studio, and it was huge, and it was full of props. And it was like, I mean, the set pieces, there was a Stargate, there was a this, there was like spaceships. I mean, it was really wild. And I saw these things. So I went to Michael Greenberg, producer,
Yeah.
writer, and I said, Michael, I'm directing a play right now, and it takes place in New York City. And if I could get four of those, they were like 30-foot columns with cross steel with bolts. They were actually made of wood, but they look like those subway platform
Okay.
struts. And I said, if I could have four of those and I'll pay you whatever you need. He said, give me 20 minutes. And he comes back, he says, you can use them. We have others stored in another building. You can grab those. You don't need to pay us. Just bring them
Wow.
back in the
Just bring it
condition
back.
that you found them. I mean, who does that?
Yeah.
It's, the Stargate, those productions are big, big, big pieces of machinery, and they don't have time for this stupidity. And it made the show. Matter of fact, when we were taking them down at the end, some family members and friends were sitting in the audience watching us tear the set down, and we started leaning those over, and they're like, oh, "We thought those were holding up the ceiling."
Right.
But but the Stargate people were ultra cool. During a break, oh no, that was Stargate. Let me stay on Gamekeeper. But it was, I didn't really have time to read the whole script, so I didn't quite know what we were doing. But
You're in one section of a larger story. Yeah.
yes, yes, it was great. I mean, it was a rush.
Wow. It was one of my favorite episodes back in the day because um, we got to Dwight Schultz is in that episode as well. Brilliant actor.
Yes.
We also have Kowalski back in one of the other shards of that whole presentation. But with this one, we actually got to see how Daniel lost his folks. And that was really out of left field. And the fact that we experience it again and again, and it's
Yeah.
just like, this sucks. And at the same time, this is the first time I'm watching this. It's like the gamekeeper is testing him. He's like, if you keep on tweaking this, what would happen if you manage to get them out of it? And Daniel
Mm,
at one point tries,
mm.
and it realizes, at this point, one way or another, he can't change the past. What's happened has happened, and he just starts letting it happen again and again. What was that like rewatching that episode? You told me you went and
Yeah,
saw it
and
again.
yeah, thank you for making that suggestion. I really loved it because what was, when you first watch an episode that you're in, all you watch is yourself. And then in watching it, I really, that's what makes Stargate so great, is the storytelling, the layers of storytelling. There's so much to say about that, right? Letting go of the past, reliving the past, not letting it go, having it go through your mind, go through your mind, go through your mind. So there's a greater level of what they're talking about there. And then, we'll get to that other episode where there's always a human story under all of these sci-fi levels, and that's what makes the show great. It's mythology is
Mhm.
taken from ancient times, so they did a great job with that. And I watched one of your writers just the other day, sorry, Jonathan. um, he was brilliant, and he obviously has a great resource in terms of mythology and storytelling.
There's there's a lot of depth there, and it always, I always go back to this episode in terms of a great character piece for Daniel and for Jack, because we see parts of their lives that really could have been, and it establishes Daniel's parents as archaeologists.
Mhm.
And we later find out his mother's father was into that field as well. So it really lends credence to what he did in his career. He really wasn't going to be able to. He really wasn't interested in doing anything else, despite the fact that, as tragic as it was, this is something that really ended his parents' careers and their lives and his, chance to be raised by them. This is still what he wanted to do. So,
Yes, and as an actor, Daniel got to stretch because he was working on that
yeah.
It's not an easy emotion of, your parents passing away. So, or anybody
No,
passing
exactly.
away. Mm.
Then Seth, the next year. This
Yeah.
was quite a switch for you, going from a parent of an SG team member to a Goa Uld. Bill Corcoran directed this one, and then I believe. Who wrote this episode? This was Jonathan Glassner's episode, one of the
Yes.
creators of the series. Tell
Mm.
us about Seth. Hail Dorothy.
Oh man. Yeah. No, that was a trip. I didn't know I was cast for quite a while, and they were taking a long time. And then finally, what happens is you get a call from the wardrobe department before your agent even knows. It happens a lot because the wardrobe's right on top of it. Once they get the flag, they call you. And then I called my agent and said, "Hey, by the way," she goes, "Oh, those wardrobe people," and they were super cool. They noticed I had a pierced ear, so they gave me an earring, and that was nice. It's probably the last time I wore one. And that leather jacket was made of, I don't know if they do it the same way nowadays, but it was made of a number of different leathers. And but then getting on the set, it was a location shoot. So location shoots can be a little more tense because the crew has a lot more physical work to do. They have to get up earlier to get there with their equipment, unload the equipment, get it. So there's a lot of so what I learned to do on sets is I'm pretty quiet until I'm spoken to. I'm just there because there's a lot of hubbub going on, and you never know, what's happening, and they need to communicate with each other. But it was
Right.
it was just the most professional, smart production, and everybody was super friendly. I had my little bevy of mostly females down at my feet,
Right.
and one of them said to me, she said, and it was during they were resetting the camera or something. And I'm sitting there, and she goes, do you know what she does? And I'm like, no. She goes, she's a Mountie. I'm like, oh. She goes, yeah, she looks like she's 12, right? And I'm like, well, that's cool. And I didn't bother going into my experience, but everybody was just really chill.
Wow.
And uh, during a break, I went outside, and I actually, I thought it was sunny because we had the lights blasting in the windows.
Into the windows.
Yeah, and it was drizzly and stuff, but still, I just want to get some air. And the DP, the director of photography, was out there, and he said, "Wow, you play a great bad guy." And I said, "Yeah." I started apologizing. I was like, I know I do so many. He goes, "Don't say that." He goes, "Donald Sutherland did a lot, and then he tried to stay away from it, and he didn't work for a number of years, and then he went back to that, which led him into some of the more realistic roles that he wanted to do." And yeah, it's like you go with what you got, so it's all cool, But on that set, it was, it moved pretty quickly. Everybody knew what they were doing, and we just rock and rolled and went along. I was on that shoot for 5 days. And the first shoot, Gamekeeper, was 1 day. So the 5-day run was very, very cool. And Mr. Anderson was very friendly. I talked more with Michael and Amanda because we had a break, and we went to this break room for a while. And then I could, we reflected back on when we reflected back about his play, and
Right.
Amanda was very, very friendly. And, Mr. Anderson has a lot to do. He's also executive producer, so he's running around making decisions and stuff. And I mean, that's an incredible workload. And then he keeps that wonderful smarmy acting going on the side. I mean, I ran into him once when I was jogging around Stanley Park, which is a 6-mile run. And again, it was a drizzly Sunday morning, and I'm coming along. Who's that? And as we pass each other, we're like, I look familiar, but we just kept going, Because I know for him that has to happen all the time, and I just, I'm sure he's just enjoying a break for a change, so I didn't want to bug him.
Well, yeah, Vancouver used to be such a small town, especially in the earlier days of Stargate SG-1, and now it's just absolutely exploded.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's just become an industry town, and Stargate is one of those pillars that really brought it up with the professionalism that they had, with the money that they had into production, going into 17 seasons of this thing. It had to have just been a wild ride to just be a part of it, just to sit back and watch it take place, and then to do your thing.
And you realize it more later, at the time it's like, oh, I got a job, this is great.
Right.
And then as it goes, you go, wow, this thing, and what was I, season 2, 3?
Both 2 and 3. That's
yeah,
right.
So
yeah, and we are talking about it 22 years later.
Yeah.
And you haven't aged a day. I think you've got a sarcophagus somewhere.
Well, There's the other story I didn't tell you yet. When I went for
What's
that,
that?
when I went for that coffee, I saw the Stargate.
Yeah.
I just got back, dude.
Oh, that's funny. Jeez.
But I also love the story in the Seth one about the family, conflict between families, and Teal'c's asking, do you not unconditionally love your children? And it
Yeah.
was very moving. That was a very moving episode of the coming togethers and the understandings. Makes me well up right now thinking about it. But brilliant on the part of the writers. Really great.
It is, and this is a real thing. I think that one of the things about this episode that really hits me hard is that cults harness hearts and minds and separate families and take loved ones from each other. And we've all all you can see all kinds of examples of it where the parents will go to the police, and police can't do anything.
Right.
What do you want us to do? You want us to? There's no we have no reason to infringe on this group of people's rights and pull someone out of there who doesn't want to be found.
Right.
And what do? I had a fifth grade. I had a teacher who lost a child to one of these groups, and she didn't see her for years. I don't even know what happened, but I mean it's a real thing.
Yeah. I think a person needs a lot of money, and you hire a special team of people to go in and kidnap them. That's the only way it can happen. But
Yeah.
I think that same scenario can happen within a couple. When somebody works somebody over and they kind of aren't themselves anymore, and then you're like, where did my sister go, or whatever it is? You know what I mean? I know that's a different thing, but it's still kind in the psychological realm. It still exists, I think, in many ways.
I have some fan questions here for you, if you don't
All
mind me
right.
getting to some of these. General Maximus, how did the experience on Stargate compare to some of the other projects of the same scale that you've done?
I think all of them are professional. I worked on another sci-fi show there. I had 12 episodes. I was reoccurring, and it was a heavy prosthetic job and all this kind of stuff. And I asked one of the eight, and I'd worked 3 other roles on it before. And
First
that was
wave, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And I decided at the end of that one I was going to leave town because just to try something new. But I asked the AD, the first assistant director, I said, I noticed like directors work differently. And he said, there's 3 ways. He goes, there's a director who knows exactly what they want to shoot, and they do that. And the day goes pretty well. It can go a little bit over. Then there's a director who doesn't know what they're really doing. They don't understand editing or framing. And those days go over time. People get hurt because they'll be running, as characters running through the woods, trips on something, they're tired.
Yep.
The crew's
Start to
tired.
get exhausted. Yep.
Then there's the director who knows exactly what they're doing, and they've made a shot list, sometimes a storyboard. But that way, the shot list, then the makeup people can be ready for what's coming next. The wardrobe people, if there's armament, that person's ready, and everything's bam, bam. And that's the way it should be, because there's no, although it's odd because a lot of TV directors come out of nowhere, and I'm like, wow, how do these people get this job? But anyway, so Stargate has that down. Most of the episodes on First Wave had that down because it's time and money and health.
Right.
And the unions are very strong, and they help us too. So, but Stargate, I think Stargate just will always remain the top. My personal experience with the people that were on it, the professionalism of the crew, how quickly the camera people worked. I don't know if you saw my bio. I was living in New York during 9/11, and I went back to film school.
Okay.
I went back to film school because there was a lull in the industry. So I took a 3-month full intensive filmmaking program, which actually helped me really understand what every single department does. I can walk on a set and know there should be a trash can over there, But anyway,
Right.
I'm really appreciative of the professionalism of all of those companies there.
Alicia Cuoco, what character took you time to get under the skin of the character and really figure out what made it tick?
I'm pretty quick.
Okay.
The Meisner stuff is pretty straightforward. It's
Okay.
understanding what you want and how do you feel about it.
Okay.
Seth wanted power, and I'm angry that these people are getting in my way. it's, I know I can get into the story, I can get into the mythology, but as an actor in that moment, it doesn't really help me. It's not going to make a hoot. I did a play with a guy. I was a prisoner in the Middle East and a pawn for the government, and it was based on a true story of a professor. And he gave me books, and I said, it just doesn't matter. You know, I want to be home with my wife, and I know these people are going to kill me. How do I feel about it? Now let's go. So I get into things very quickly, and because of that. And you know, I'll give you a quick example. If you were driving down a highway or freeway, and some person in a red sports car goes bombing by you and changing lanes recklessly, and of course you're like, "Rrr."
As they frequently do.
Right. But then you find out where you get to where you're going, and there's a hospital across the street, and that guy's taking his wife out of the car because she's pregnant. So you suddenly go, ah. So as an actor, you look at the script and find those moments in terms of why do I feel these things, you know, and you know, as an actor, those are the things you do. What is the circumstance? What do you want?
Yeah. The goal, if you look at the tapestry of the gold over the course of, you know, 8 or 9 seasons of SG1, they were always out for, generally speaking, not all of them, but most of them were out for absolute power and control. And when you look at some of these quieter gold, several of them are more than happy to settle for a certain amount and then just be left alone.
Right.
And Seth was one of these who, you know, didn't necessarily want to take over the earth. Maybe in a few thousand years, that was his game plan. But he was very content to have his enclave, to have his harem, and, you know, his technological advances with his weaponry, and just kind of exist. And, you know, I think that makes for a very different look at a Gould compared to one who's interested in world domination. He could have been left alone for another 1,000 years. You never known he was there.
Right. And yes. Oh gosh, I was going to say something about that and I just lost it. Never mind.
It'll be
Oh,
back.
I know what it is. I also, on that note, most TV shows have a good guy in the lead, and I think it's time that we had a good Gould in the lead. You know, let's wreak some havoc.
Actually, you know,
there's a plug.
Absolutely. Did you get a chance to meet Cliff Simon before he passed?
I did not. I did not. Yeah, that was tragic.
What a brilliant human being and a brilliant actor.
And he affected so many people. I mean, so many people miss him and loved him and respected what he did and was entertained by him. So yeah, that was sad. That was very sad.
Absolutely. Lockwatcher, the hand device. Tell us about wearing the hand device and your impressions of some of these props.
That was nice. That they have a weight to them because they're metal, they're not plastic. And then I had to, you know, I had to grab Amanda and flip her head side to side. But actually, it was one of those acting things where she was doing the work and my wrist was just going like this, you know.
Right.
But that thing was designed in a way, you know, didn't have any sharp edges and whatnot. And of course, then she got her due with me later. But no,
most definitely.
It was very, very cool because then when I come down the stairs, was it my left hand? Yeah. When I come down the stairs and I'm going to zap my 2 leads, I thought I need something more than just. So I threw the growl into it. It was like, you know, and the beam came out. The special effects guys there were very clear to me on what they needed about certain things, like hold that so they can get, you know, place the beam in it.
Correct.
And then my glowing eyes are like, try to be really still because we're gonna, you know. So that was and that was a bit ahead of its time for its day. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I want one of those. Oh, I'm going to be going to do, if I can say this, I'm going to be doing a Stargate fan film. I'm going to shoot that in England in August, where Seth will be represented. And they're getting all those doodads. So I'm really curious to see how this works, but I'll certainly be posting it. So a young director named Sam Cockings, who I met at the Chevron event in London. He's very talented. He's doing green screen with some very serious visuals of ships and whatnot, battles and stuff like that. So it'll be a lot of fun. We
featured some of his work in a recent episode with Joseph Malazzi, where he's starting to test some of these ideas out. He's very good. So
what was Joseph Malazzi doing? Writing?
I had him on to discuss. I think season 1 of SGU. Yeah. So
Joe wasn't in Samuel's piece.
No, he wasn't. He was doing an episode with me, and I plugged Sam's bit for that.
Gotcha.
So it's very cool. I heard that you were doing this, and I'm glad to hear that this is moving forward. So this is great.
Yeah, Cool. You know everything.
I don't, but I have my ear to the ground. So, Teresa MC, did archaeology or Egyptology ever appeal to you growing up?
I was always a bit of a, I use this in a positive way. I was always a bit of a science geek. I was taking things apart. My dad had a 3 horsepower boat motor, and it didn't work. So I took it apart, and then I tried to put it together, and there's some pieces left over. So that didn't work so well, but I was always doing that. And then I got it. I'll just tell you this short story. So we would go get on our bikes and go to this place called the Museum of Science and Technology in Ottawa, and they had the Gemini capsule, like the real one, touring
Oh,
the country. And I was like,
cool.
oh. And then
Yeah.
then they landed on the moon. And then my mom got me a lunar landing module model, which I put together with the orbiter. And they had there was a chocolate bar with gold wrapper, so I put gold around the feet and gold around it. And my sister was getting married, so I took this like 4.5 foot long box and I flipped it on its side, threw out the lid, covered it with black crate paper, put tin foil on the bottom, put my models in there. I hung the orbiter up by threads, and then I stuck blue Christmas lights in it.
Oh,
And
jeez.
I'd invite my friends over after sunset, and then I'd plug it in. They'd be like, "Woo, this was cool." So I then joined the rocket club in high school. I launched a rocket, and that's kind of been a lot of my my interest in terms of sci-fi. But when I was a kid, I enjoyed. They had a place in Ottawa called Max Gimming's Farm, which is a science farm, and you could go there and they learn how to like count how many, how much lumber is in a square 1,000 feet, or look at the guppies and all that.
Yes.
And I think I would have gone toward being some sort of nature person, studying of nature, which would have certainly come in handy now. But it intrigued me. I love being out in the country, and I love being with nature and studying all of that.
Pac-Man D3, what did you think of the Jaffa joke involving the Setesh guard?
Um,
The one Jaffa joke that's
I
ever been
know.
told in
Does
all of.
anybody does anybody get it? 'Cause
I think they're just looked as beneath the other guards. Maybe they're always sick or something. I don't know.
I thought it was perfect because it was so stupid. You know what I mean? I mean, and how he enjoyed it himself was great.
Right.
I enjoyed it for that. It's like the joke on the joke,
Of
and that was
course.
very cool. It's better that it didn't have any heavy factual reality in it.
Exactly. Something
Clever
something was going
writing,
on there.
clever writing.
Summer wanted to know: have you remained a fan of the franchise? Would you be interested in returning if they did a new show?
Oh, heck yeah, of course. Everybody's aware of the Amazon MGM thing. I mean,
Yes.
I think, my opinion, of course, everybody would love to be working on it again, but I think they'll bring back certain people for little guests and things like that. And if let's assume it goes forward, but who knows how MGM or how Amazon will handle that. But yeah, of course, man. I mean, it would be an honor just to be part of that legacy, that history, which I think is a legacy.
What other than the fan film that's being developed by Samuel? What else can we expect you in down the road here? What should we keep an eye open for?
Well, I might be doing some theater in New York City, but so
Okay.
that'll be hard to get to. But I tend to, this goes back to my geekishness. I tend to go into different areas from time to time. So years ago, I created an animated pilot that taught children the written Chinese characters,
Ah,
which took
okay.
which took me, it took years to do and took me all over the world. I went to China 4 times. I went to Korea, Hong Kong, Italy. And then most recently, well, not most recently, one other thing more recently was that I was editing and directing a documentary about post-traumatic stress based on combat trauma. And I'm pretty much done that. A friend of mine was a lifetime member of the Actors Studio and a veteran of the war in Vietnam, was told at the studio that he should try to write something about this. So he wrote what was in the beginning a one-man show, and then there was a second character in there, a female that represents life and death and all this stuff. And then I directed him in that play in LA. He took that play back to Vietnam to do it in front of the former enemy. And so now I'm pretty much done the documentary. I just need to get the financing to do the cleanup of audio and stuff, which is the smaller part. So I go off in these different directions. And right now, my younger brother is a fairly prominent, very talented animator who's had his own company now for 11 going on 12 years. and we're putting together the business aspect of doing a film, feature animated film, which will be his first. His last gig, he was in London. He did the animation for his company did the animation for the Mary Poppins Returns film. So,
Okay.
so I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
so, but the point is, I really want to get back to New York and do acting, but also TV film stuff from there, because there's also Toronto available. So that's kind of my goal once I get this other stuff out of the way.
Well, going back to your roots and what you're passionate about, I completely get that. And I will keep my ear to the ground as well. I may just have to come and see you because it's been a while since I've been to New York and I want to go back.
Yeah, cool. I'll let you know.
Please do. Absolutely. Sir, this has been such a pleasure having you on. And where can we follow you? Are there any special social medias or anything in particular that you want us to point out?
I'm a little old school with the
Okay.
Facebook. Facebook is pretty, or if you want to check stuff, is good old imdb.com.
Okay.
But Facebook, I do have an Instagram, and I use it so seldom I don't know what it is right now, but I'll
Okay.
send that to you. And then if you
Please.
want to forward it, that would be great.
I will add it to the description of the episode for sure.
Sure. And my email address is in the IMDb thing if you want to do that, because I welcome any questions people have and anything you want to know.
I appreciate you, Rob, for coming on. This means a great deal, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you in person in GateCon in
Yes.
Vancouver in September.
David, you have the coolest show. I've learned so much more, and you're definitely, your stuff. So that's really a relief.
I
It's
appreciate
great.
you.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself, and we will be in touch. I look forward to working with you some more.
Goodbye, everybody.